but I'm a big believer that like I would not be sober if I didn't have a sense of purpose. Finding that sense of purpose and then like going the distance and doing whatever you have to do to really like achieve those things, or like, you know, just walk that path of whatever it might be. You know, whatever it might be that you love. I feel like that's really what keeps people sober. And I feel like as a recovery coach, having the opportunity to like support people in, you know, finding out those things and like really rediscovering themselves has been like one of the greatest gifts that I've had.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce the Third, he, him pronouns.
And I am Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
And how is your energy, Liz?
My energy is great. We just got back from our little podcast field trip to the big NYC. Pretty sure I snuck in live from New York. It's the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. Now, even after the fact, but that'll be the last time I do it. But my energy is really good because that was really fun and I'm excited to be home. How about you? How's yours?
Yeah, don't lie. That will not be the last time you do
Probably
that. No, my energy's cool. The sun is out. I took a walk. It's spring time outside, and besides like getting absolutely jumped and mollywopped by pollen, is a
Wait,
beautiful
I'm gonna
day.
need you to rewind that. What did you just call yourself?
What? You ain't never got like jumped and mollywopped by the pollen floating in the air?
I've never heard that in my entire life.
I was put in a headlock and got my butt beat by the pollen.
Molly,
but yeah, look. So usually I'm the one that's cracking up at Liz's synonyms, metaphors. Like she ain't never heard mollywop before. Anyways, let's not keep our guests waiting for us, Liz. Who do we have here?
Oh,
Who do we have here today?
I can recover from this. It's the best thing ever. Today,
That's how I felt about my allergies.
We have sharing in my mirth, Collin Wainwright, who is a recovery coach for Mountainside Recovery in Philadelphia. Here to talk to us about many things, including running and recovery and treatment and probably things that we don't even have any idea about yet. And I can't wait to have the conversation. So welcome, Collin. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Collin, what's up?
I'm doing well, thank you. Fun fact. So I used to, try to like rhyme things together. I don't want to say that I was like, I went through like a little rap phase when I was in college, and I've spent many hours looking for things that rhyme with Collin, and pollen is the only thing. The only thing. So that's what I thought of.
Is Collin as dangerous as pollen?
Not nearly.
Have you ever mollywopped anyone, Collin?
Never. You know what? But I've been attacked. By pollen a few times. So
okay, all right. So we're brothers in the same ship. We understand what pollen can do to you, and we understand what it feels to be mollywopped.
Oh my God!
Collin, how is your energy today?
My energy is good. It's a little dreary out here in Philadelphia, but I got out this morning. I went for a nice little jog. I didn't really want to be honest. I usually do want to, but I didn't today. But I did anyway, because that's what it's about. Showing up even when I don't want to. I don't know. It's hard for me to not right now because I'm listening to this audiobook by David Goggins called, I think it's Never Finished.
Never Finished.
So, it's like, I can't listen to that and then not go out, not hold myself accountable to what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, what I read, was it Can't Hurt Me? That was the first one.
Oh
Read
yeah.
that one, and he is absolutely insane. Yeah, there's no way that you're going to be able to listen to anything from David Goggins and make an excuse as to why you can't do what it is that you set out to do.
Yeah, no, he's a savage, and I love that, and I try to embody some of that savage mentality
Mm.
from time to time.
So like, what is your relationship with that energy of showing up in the face of adversity, that energy of showing up in the face of resistance and showing up anyway? Has that been always inherent within you, or is that something that you've cultivated within your journey?
I think it's always been an intention that I had for myself. Like I think I always thought of myself as somebody who showed up and got things done even when I didn't want to. But to quote the late great, actually I don't even know who said this, but it was like from the movie Batman Begins. Like it's not who you are underneath, but it's what you do that defines you. Like even though that's kind of how I thought of myself, at least throughout my time drinking, I ran from a lot of the things that I didn't want to do. I think that's been like one of the greatest gifts in recovery is to develop a level of discipline where it's like, whether I want to or not, I show up, and that's like whether it's commitments that I make to other people or to myself. I think it's one of the gifts really is to have, I don't know, to have that like level of integrity and wherewithal. Because if I only did things on the days that I wanted to or showed up when I wanted to, I wouldn't get a whole lot done.
Yeah.
I think for me, this is a selfish conversation. Well, first I want to speak to the fact, why do all the great quotes come from superhero movies? Like,
Right.
with great power comes great responsibility as Spider-Man. Like, who writes these movies? Like,
They're called super for a reason.
but secondly, though, I'm having this conversation right now with my money coach around self-will and willpower. And because of the modality that saved my life, 12-step, I was brought up to think that self-will and willpower were like they had these icky connotations. Like they had that I was set up to kind of fear willpower because my willpower had got me there. And so like there's this rhetoric around in those tables where it's like willpower is taking my will back versus doing the things, which is giving my will to something higher than me, which had got me sober and had kept me sober. And so now I'm having this conversation around like willpower and the biology behind willpower, and learning to give my thoughts, my impulsive thoughts and my impulsive nature a name so I can look at it and learn to show up how it is that I desire versus how it is that I impulsively want to show up. And that's been a whole journey for me. And so in relation to your recovery, which if you'd like to share with us how you define that, that'd be beautiful. How does you showing up in willpower and showing up with determination and with like savage mode, right? How does that coincide with what it is that you define your recovery to be?
For me, so recovery, I would say, at least at this point in my life, is abstinence based, and I do some 12-step as well. And yeah, I think that you see a lot on like I don't read it as much anymore, but I used to go on like Facebook and whatever social media platform, and it'd be like, oh, is it a choice? Is it not a choice? That kind of thing. For me, recovery is absolutely a choice that I have the privilege to make. After I'm medically detoxed from a substance and no longer like physically dependent. Anybody that says like recovery doesn't take willpower is definitely wrong, because I feel like there have been a lot of times in my sobriety where all the meetings and like all the things, that I maybe like thought were gonna like save me and kind of make me feel like an enlightened Buddhist, like, didn't take away my humanness, didn't take away like the spectrum of emotions that I was still gonna feel as like a regular human being, like sadness, depression, anxiety, all these things. And I think that's like one of the misconceptions that I had. It's like, oh man, I was going to hit that 12 steps and, like I was going to wake up and light was going to come through the window and it's going to be like, oh, and having that expectation, I think like kept me from happiness for a while rather than just kind of like accepting like, hey, I'm a human being. I'm going to feel things. That doesn't mean that I'm doing anything wrong necessarily. It just means that I'm human. And I think a lot of the resistance that I find in myself to like various things, whether it's, running or I'm in school for my MSW right now, like doing homework, the things that I don't want to do. I think, showing up and doing those things and kind of proving to myself, like, look, like I can do these things and like I can use my mind in a positive way to help me. Even though sometimes it can feel like the mind is like the thing that's kind of like keeping me where I'm at. And I think it really just like all comes back to discipline. Like I don't believe there is like any secret sauce as far as like I think it's really just about consistency. And the more I make it a habit to show up in my life, and do those things that I don't want to do, whether it's a run or jog or anything, go to a meeting, make a call, do like a work responsibility thing. The more I do those, the more it becomes a habit where it's like, oh, my first reaction when something in my life goes a way that I don't want it to go, it's not to like avoid. It's to like, all right, it's time to like jump into this because I know that relief is on the other side of me taking responsibility and like moving through that and working through it.
Yeah. I feel like so much of that is like collecting evidence of how much you're going to be glad, even if on the front end, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. The thing is the thing I don't want to do. Like, and you become more and more certain because it's happened so many times that you really like having done it. Like the thing on the other side is something. So even if it's just like, okay, I don't want to be in that moment where I'm running or doing homework or something, it feels hard, but you do want the thing that's on the other side of it. And like moving further and further away of thinking that immediate, satisfaction or, relief or whatever is the higher good. And it's just building that evidence and repaving pathways, like in your brain and all, having those habits allow that choice to be, still maybe not the one that's the most fun in the moment, but the one that you just like immediately like turn towards because you know what it, like you said, what it feels like on the other side. It's just showing yourself over and over and over again. It's really cool.
I think we need to have an episode on biology, man. Like we got to have like a scientist on or something because there's a lot of stuff that I'm learning about the gray matter in the brain and how, neuroplasticity has always been a part of like what I've learned as I've looked it up because as a person in recovery, experiencing an entire psychic change and like literally like looking back at photos and it's like, yo, that's not the same person. So not only has my mind changed, but like my physical structure has changed as a result of the habits that I've been participating in within the past few years, right? And so I would be very interested in having a discussion around like how big of a role does like biology, physiology play into people who suffer from substance use disorder or alcoholism, because there's also some people, for me at least, like looking at the world and just doing character studies because I'm that guy. Some people seem like they have a grip on self-will and like willpower more than others. And like, I feel I can be a bit floaty. As a matter of fact, like a big part of my process of showing up in life, I kind of depend a bit on my impulsivity. And that was also a big driver of like my active addiction. It's like that impulsive nature. Ooh, you know what to feel good right now? Ooh, you know what to make this better? Ooh, you know what to make me feel better? Like, and so I've learned to use it productively. And there's still ways that it shows up counterproductively, like be it eating sweets or, spending money I shouldn't spend. So it's like that relationship between physiology, biology, and how it is that we show up intentionally in our life to create the outcome that we desire to create. Like that's such an interesting process to me.
Yeah, it's like mind, body, spirit. And I'm a big believer as well. And in like mind, body, spirit. And I love I don't think he's a biologist, I think he's a neuroscientist, but me and Liz before the podcast, we're talking about the Huberman Lab podcast and, some of the stuff that he talks about in like deliberate cold exposure, how, if you do like 11 minutes a week, not only is it great for like our body physically, but it also like it builds that, I guess what you could call like mental toughness and an ability to push through things when you don't want to do it anymore. When it's like, this is so cold right now, all I can think about is getting out of the water. But then you stay and you realize that like, look, like I'm the pilot of this vessel, this bag of consciousness. And through like sustained practice of those things and really anything I think that's difficult, you can really like kind of hone in on mastery. But then again, I can swing too far to the end of the spectrum where it's like, all right, well, now I'm not giving myself any compassion. And I think for me, one of the hardest things throughout my recovery journey has been balancing accountability with compassion. Because in 12-step, I feel like I learned a sense of extreme accountability. It's like I'm accountable for everything. Whereas like, I think it's also like I need to give myself that compassion and the ability to make mistakes, because I can be like a perfectionist. And I'm a big believer that a lot of spirituality is about kind of moving away from perfectionism and being okay just kind of how we are.
I just feel like you're just so speaking our language. And, Bryce talks about compassion all the time. And we also, Bryce and I, and every guest we have has a little bit of a different recovery pathway. And that's interesting about that relationship between discipline and accountability and compassion. Because I think we all come to this space from a very personal like understanding of that and practice of that. I know people that absolutely, have felt like they always pointed the finger outward and never inward. And that was, a really big challenge to finding recovery. And then I talked to folks who, and I know this has been my experience, not like, I'm this incredibly, not like I never point the finger outward, like, please. But definitely when I came to recovery, that was an issue that I had, that I was so just, I was the worst person in the entire world, and there was just no redemption possible for me. And like, there was nothing that you could say to me that wasn't, that I hadn't said to myself times 1,000. And that was a real barrier to getting sober, because I was just like, no, I'm terrible. No, I am the worst person in the world. No, there is absolutely no saving me. And like, I know the things going on in this head, and I just keep making the wrong choices. And like, I deserve all the bad things coming to me. And, and you really like, that lack of self-compassion, it gets to be old pretty quick. And like, there's no room to improve from there. It becomes such a hindrance, and so recovery for me, and so much of the Phoenix community for me, was just being like, no, you actually do have value. And also, you're not the worst. So you're not the only one. You're not, this is something that we all go through, and there's something on the other side. And also you can help, somebody else. And I think that's a big part of that. I feel like maybe that's like the entry for so many of us. That bridge is when you realize that you have something to offer to somebody else. It's like, oh, well, damn.
I got a question for you, Liz. How is that relationship with yourself now? Like the way that you talk to yourself, and being hard on yourself versus like allowing for that compassion. How's that going for you these days?
Well, as a person who knows me very well, I would love to lie to you, but I sure can't, can I?
I felt that energy.
Like, how dare you? Well, it's still a definite work in progress. They say, that awareness is a step in the right direction. So I have that. So I definitely notice, when some of those mean things come up that I say to myself. I also am fortunate to be surrounded by people who love me and will remind me when I am doing that, call me out on my crap, if I'm doing it in a way that's just like, all right, you're just going down that path. That's just the easy way to do it. So I would say it's probably going to be a lifelong conversation that I have with myself. And lately, definitely, it's been a little bit of a struggle, but it helps to be able to talk about it and to be in this community is a constant reminder because, you know, you look around at all the people that are all just wonderful and, you know, worthy and deserve just all sorts of good things in life. And when you see those people looking at you feeling the same way, it's helpful. Makes a big difference. Community is a big part of that. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for your honesty. And I mean, like, I think you said it right there. I think that's an element of compassion where it's like, yo, this might be a lifetime thing, like, you know, and how can I show up today and allow for, you know, if I get to a point where you stupid dumb brain, like, you know, I can say like, no, that's not it. That's not how I want to talk to myself. And I can refresh and I can restart. Sometimes on a momentary basis, like moment to moment, like, you know what, that's not it. No, as a matter of fact, no, you know, and that reprogramming, if we're talking about how, you know, neuroplasticity, like the mind begins to like, you curve grows in the mind that it's like, oh, I don't talk to myself like that. And it becomes habitual to talk to myself in a loving and kind manner.
Yeah.
Collin, I'm super interested in how you got into running, how running became important to you in your recovery, and what that looks like for you.
In high school, I played lacrosse and soccer, and you know, I don't know. I at the moment, like, you know, as a like a high school athlete, I felt like I didn't respond very well to pressure. Like I always played sports with a lot of doubt in my heart and in my mind, like afraid to make a mistake, afraid to, you know, disappoint my teammates or just myself. It's like impossible to do anything when you're all selfed up like that and you're just like in your head overthinking everything. Like I feel like I probably never, except for briefly, like entered like a flow state of just like I'm doing. It was always like I'm thinking. I was never doing. So, you know, up until like my senior year, I played lacrosse and soccer, and then I made like a bad mistake in a soccer game. The one day it was like there was like a bouncing ball in the air, and I like totally whiffed, and the guy like behind me kicked it in for a goal, and it was like my coach was like, you know, all right, like sit on the bench, and so I rode the bench for a good portion of that season, and you know, I in order to stay in shape for soccer, I would run indoor track during the winter. And so that winter, my track coach was just like, look, you know, if you're gonna sit the bench when you're playing soccer, like, you know, I think you could be a really good runner. I think you got a lot of potential. You should come out and run spring track and cross country. And I was like, all right, like that seems reasonable. Plus, I was going to sit the bench because I really was not a very good soccer player. And I think, you know, there was something freeing about running that I didn't feel during any other sport. Like it was, you know, I never had a fear of like letting anybody down. It was just like go out and like, you know, internally I could just like push myself. And as long as I pushed myself to the limit, then I knew like, all right, like I left it all out there. Like I'm not, you know, I wasn't so attached to like a win or a loss. Plus in track, it's great. Like the first 6 people, or it's like top 10% of the race all get a medal. So I would like, you know, be in 5th place and I'd still get a medal. And so, yeah, I kind of realized pretty quickly that I was a much better runner than I was at any of the other sports. And so I ended up getting recruited by Bloomsburg University to run track and field. And up to that point, you know, I got to Bloomsburg and I started running on a track and a cross country team. And it was great. I loved it. But I don't think I really like appreciated the sport and, you know, what the sport really gave me as a person, you know, as like an outlet. And I kind of got like caught up in just like the party lifestyle of college, you know, drinking, smoking weed. And at the end of the season, you know, there's drug tests. And I think it's something like 10% of every team has to get drug tested. Well, cross country team, it was only like 10 or 12 people. So it was like me and like one other person. And unfortunately I failed the drug test and I got suspended from the NCAA for 1 year. And that was like a massive blow to my ego because, for me, like, that's why I was there. Like, that was such a big part of my identity. I mean, that's where my friends were. That's like the only reason I went to that school was to run cross country and track and field. So when that happened, kind of like hit like a super low point. Like, I'll never forget, I was in a math class when I got the email and it said like in 48 hours you're getting drug tested. After that, I suspended, and I really just kind of like went off the rails. I feel like the structure in my life kind of fell. No longer, I didn't have practice. I didn't really have any like reason to not stay up late and drink and go out. And I started to do that stuff like more and more frequently. And it was like the more I drank, the worse I did in class because the less I was going to class, and the worse I did in class, the worse I thought about myself. And so, the more I drank to cope with that. And it was just chaos. Like, along the way, I got like a bunch of underage drinking charges. And I just like slowly snowballed into that pit of despair of like all of the things that I like identified myself as, like an athlete, a good person, like someone who's in college, like that pie that like was myself. Kind of just like each one of those things like fell by the wayside. And Liz, you talked about how you come into recovery and you're like conflicted because it's like, well, I feel like I feel like a good person, but then I kind of look at some of the things that I'm guilty of, and it's like, well, good people don't act that way. And so, one of my favorite things that somebody told me when I first got sober was, you're not a bad person trying to get good, you're a sick person trying to get well. And I really resonated with that. But yeah, after about a couple months of being clean and sober in 2016, I was actually in treatment on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgivings are like a special holiday for me. I have a lot to be grateful for. My mom was just like, you should run the Philadelphia Marathon. And I was like, I should run the Philadelphia Marathon. Like, that sounds like a great idea. And she gave me her old Garmin watch. And it was the first time, because coming out of treatment, like, I really didn't have any skills. Like, I didn't have a degree. I really didn't have a whole lot of things in my life to feel good about. And that was like one thing that I could feel good about. I could go for a run and kind of just like ease my mind. I like to talk about like my brain in early recovery, like a 24/7 shit talk radio. It's just like a highlight reel of guilt, shame, all the things that I drank about to not think of. Like, that was my brain in early recovery. So anytime I could get out and go, I did. And I eventually ran the Philadelphia Marathon, and I've ran marathons since then. That was the hardest one, and probably the most gratifying one as well, because I ran it right after I had a year sober.
That's so awesome. It's funny. We were talking earlier, actually, before you hopped on, Bryce, about meditation and about how that's like an area that you really enjoyed in treatment, and then got out of treatment and just haven't really like felt like you got hold of that practice. But I mean, the way you describe running, that sounds pretty meditative to me. That like allows your radio station to shut off. Is that kind of how it feels for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like running has been kind of like not only physical, but like a spiritual practice as well, where I can really just like tune into my body and I'm not up in my head. And I can listen to music or whatever, and just like, it's an escape, but like a healthy one. I feel like in a lot of ways, my addictive personality switched from alcohol and drugs to running. And I'm glad that it did, because it's definitely introduced me to people. Just like being an athlete, being a runner, introduced me to people and give me opportunities that I wouldn't have had since. Like, I signed up for the Boston Marathon this was 2020. So in 2020 it got canceled. So I was waiting to run the Boston Marathon for like a whole 2 years. And during that time, I think it was like 6 months before Boston, that was supposed to be like my goal race. I was just scrolling on Instagram and I saw this thing about like Release Recovery Foundation, and they were like holding a team to fundraise for recovery and mental health for the New York City Marathon. And it was like 3 weeks after the Boston Marathon. And I was like, oh man, like this is too good to be true. Like, my two favorite things really, like running and recovery, coming together, and, doing something positive for the recovery community. So that year I talked to my coach and I was like, look, I have to do this. Like, this is, I feel like this is, like, not to be like woo woo, but like this, I feel like this is my higher power putting this like in my path so that I could do it. So that year I ran Boston, and then 3 weeks later I ran New York. I took Boston easy, and I ran New York City hard, because I don't know, I felt emotionally attached to the New York City Marathon just because of the fundraising and the cause. So I really wanted to like save that as like my hard effort race.
Man, that is, and just for anyone who might not know what a marathon really entails, like, how long is it if you decide that you're going to run a marathon? How long are you out there on the
Sure.
road?
Yeah, it is 26.2 miles.
Holy smokes. Yes, it is.
Sheesh. That's a lot of miles.
A lot of miles. Yeah. Yeah. That's
And so do you place in those, right? Because it's a race. So, like, do you place?
So in the race, I ran in 2 hours, 32 minutes and some change. I can't remember. I think it was like 14 seconds or 16 seconds, but I think there was like somewhat less people that year running, but I was 49th, like the 49th finisher in New York. And then I think I was like the 27th American to finish.
there are like tens of thousands of people, aren't there?
I can't remember how many. There was definitely like 20 or 30,000, but I feel like it probably was a little less just because it was COVID year. But I remember one of the coolest things about that race. So my geography with New York is not good, but there's a bridge where you're on this bridge and you're going up, and you can't, like, there's no room for spectators, so you can't hear anything except for like the breathing and the footsteps of other runners. And that year was the year that a professional runner for Nike, Shalane Flanagan, was running all 6 marathon majors. And I was like running right next to her on that bridge. And it was so cool because you get off of it. And I tell anybody who's going to run the New York City Marathon, like, if you're listening to music, like, pause your music when you come off of this bridge right past the halfway point, because it's absolutely incredible. The cheers, like the crowd of New York is really just a vibe that carries you. It's the greatest race ever.
That is so cool.
Thanks for that visual, because I just seen it. And I just heard it. Wow, that must have been.
I think the crowds were like extra loud too, because I was next to like a professional elite runner, and so I kind of felt like I was like a famous person.
Yeah. No, they was cheering for you, Collin. That's the twist.
Thanks,
Heck yeah.
So since the New York Marathon, have you found any more spaces where you're able to kind of bring multiple hats together like that, where you have found a space where you're running but recovery is involved? Have you found any more spaces like that? And what do they look like, if so?
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. I actually, like 9 months ago, I got like a bit of a running injury. So my running's been somewhat limited. Like, I'm still running like around like 30 miles a week. I would love if I could run like 70 or 80 miles a week. It's not how it is right now. But in running for me, like, I can kind of like surrender. I think me and Liz were talking about this. Like, I'm a big believer in just like surrendering to the process, like not being attached to results, and just kind of going out and like allowing yourself to be. And for me, other spaces that I've kind of found like a similar energy. It's kind of cliche, but I feel like a lot of people that I talk to after they get out of treatment, they're like, all right, I'm going to work in recovery. I'm going to, be a counselor or something like that. And that's like really, really what I wanted to do when I left treatment as well, was to like work in recovery, support other people. Because if it wasn't for other people, I never would have like recaptured the energy that I had as a runner. For me, one of the greatest gifts is to be able to like do that with other people and see other people, even though that I can't like do the things necessarily that I like want to do right now, as far as like hit times and all that, helping and supporting other people like in like a more professional capacity as like a recovery coach has been a place that I've found like a very similar energy. And even if it's funny, like people are so interesting. People have so many different goals, but I'm a big believer that like I would not be sober if I didn't have a sense of purpose. And so I feel like finding that sense of purpose, and then like going the distance and doing whatever you have to do to really like achieve those things, or like, just walk that path of whatever it might be. You could want to be like, the champion kickball league person in Philadelphia, or like a fisherman, or like, like a meat slicer, and like just, whatever it might be that you love. I feel like that's really what keeps people sober. And I feel like as a recovery coach, having the opportunity to like support people in, finding out those things, and like really rediscovering themselves, has been like one of the greatest gifts that I've had.
I agree.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Collin. That's also the most random three things that somebody could be interested in: the slice of meat, a fisherman, or a professional footballer.
Yeah, Bryce made that face that he usually makes when I say go gadget recovery or some other 90s reference. So thank you, Collin, for saying that one.
No, but it just goes to show how much we could be different but have in common.
I know. And I agree so much. Like, I think it's all those things, like whatever that purpose, like that having something that you are working towards, that just takes so much faith that you're going to, that you're going to get there, that you have something to give, that there's like joy to be had. Whereas so often I think when we're, drinking or using drugs or whatever we're doing to numb, we have given up that we've lost that faith. It's like, there's no other, this is the only option. This is the only way that I could feel okay, is this in this moment. And that's, like you said, I mean, that's something that not a personal moral failing. That's just this human thing that we get to work through, and then find a space where we get to get back to cutting meat if that's what we decide to do. If that brings you joy, like what a beautiful world that you now are in a place that you can make that choice and
cut that damn meat,
I love
man.
it.
Cut that damn meat.
I love it.
No, but I mean, I really do agree as well, where it's like, the meat just tastes better. Like if you like care about what you do, you know what I'm saying? Like if you care about it, if you're invested in it, if it brings you joy, if it brings you fulfillment, you just do it better. So learning to prioritize those things that drive us, that drive our spirit, and having that conversation with ourselves around like what our comparative advantage is, what it is that we're excited about, what it is that if money wasn't an issue, what we'd be doing anyway. I think that's been one of the promises delivered me in my personal recovery, is having the privilege to have that conversation with myself. And as you spoke about in the beginning, the continuity now of experience, where it's like every day is another opportunity to learn more. And self-awareness comes with that. Self-awareness is inherent within that. And it's such a beautiful thing, it's such a beautiful thing to have that relationship with ourselves. Moving forward, as a coach, as somebody who's working with people who are going through their own recovery, what's in the future for you, Collin?
Well, so it's kind of funny. Like 6 months ago, I moved to Connecticut and found Mountainside while I was in a relationship, and it was actually like healthiest. I mean, when I was drinking, I could never sustain like a human connection in an honest way. So I'm grateful for having been able to do that. It didn't work out, unfortunately, and kind of realized I wanted to move back to Philadelphia. So I walked into my supervisor's office and I was like, look, I think I have to put in my 2 weeks notice. I want to be closer to like my support network, my family. And they were really understanding and were like, well, you want to be like, recovery coach in Philadelphia. And I was like, I would love nothing more. Like I've been in recovery here for, over 6 years, and I've never heard of like peer support being utilized in that capacity. So I'm really excited to kind of like expand that network and do that here. Like you said, like it all comes back to self-compassion and love. And I think when we find things that we love, that is like the sustaining force that will like drive us when things get difficult. Like when when obstacles come in our way and when it's like, it's time to give up. I think love, like if I didn't love running, I don't think I'd still be running. If I didn't enjoy like working with people on a peer-to-peer level and like seeing them find the things that they love, I don't think I could do it because, there have been too many opportunities to give up. And when I don't love something, I find that I take those opportunities and I'll walk away from something, so yeah, I see myself hopefully building like a fantastic recovery community here, both personally and professionally. And hopefully in like a year from now, we got like a mountainside recovery 5K and you two can come out and, we can get it
Heck
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
5K I can
maybe
do.
We can avoid the pollen though.
Maybe not running, but I'll do a podcast episode.
I'll do the 5K.
No.
Marathons, I don't know. But yeah, I'm down. That's super cool. And also I know that, Phoenix is a community that you more recently connected with. But I mean, we got a crew out there in Philadelphia. So you definitely have a home there with Phoenix.
Yeah. So we ventured into the future a bit. Now we want to take a little stroll down memory lane.
Ooh, good transition.
If you could visit a previous version of yourself and tell that previous version of yourself anything, what version of yourself would that be and what would you tell them?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say I would visit probably like myself as like a middle schooler, like a young middle schooler. And then tell myself one thing that I try to tell I have a 13-year-old brother and sister, and a 15-year-old brother and sister. Well, just a sister. The 13-year-olds are twins. The other one is not a twin. And I'll just tell myself as a little kid, like, look, anything in life that you don't think is going to get better, like it's going to get better. Because I remember when, I didn't think that anywhere I ever went, anything I ever did, anyone I ever met, or anything I ever achieved would ever change the way that I felt inside. And all I really wanted to do was feel different than I felt in those moments of like darkness. And I would tell myself like, look, like, it'll get dark, but like on the other side of darkness, there's always light. You just got to see your way through it.
Love that. That's such a good message too for that age group. I don't know how many listeners we have who are, teenagers, but I'm sure we have a lot of folks who have teenagers. And man, I just remember, as a person who doesn't have teenagers, I remember being one. And you just, everything feels so big and insurmountable. And like, you just feel things so deeply. And it's to have that reassurance that, the hard stuff is hard. And also you're going to get through it is such a great message, as opposed to, I think what often kids hear, which is just like, it's not that bad. You don't even know how good you have it. Like, wait till you're grown up. And it's like, that doesn't help because it feels bad, So I love that. It's a beautiful message. And yeah, the teenager in me really appreciates you saying that.
Well, thanks, Collin, for coming and kicking it with us and sharing your energy with us. You're a good human being, and I mean, not like I'm the guy who like you're good and you're not, but just like I really like appreciate your energy, and I really love the opportunity to come and meet somebody on the show, because I don't know, there's a natural curiosity there, and I think your journey has been cool, and I think we relate a lot in terms of like life understandings, and I'm sure that somebody somewhere, multiple somebodies heard this episode and really pulled something out. And it's like, yo, that's my story. So thank you for coming to share your story on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for all the work that you and the Phoenix does. I can't wait to get more involved in the Phoenix community in the Philadelphia area.
Yay.
Nice. Did somebody say run club? Huh?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. He's already hopped on the virtual run club, which is runners all across the country. We're actually going to talk to one of the guys who runs the run club, who's going to be on after this episode. So we just our runner crew is definitely growing all across the country. This is really exciting.
Nice.
So, yeah. Well, thank you again, Collin, for coming on. And thanks to everybody who is listening. We just, we're so fortunate and can't even believe how cool it is that we get to have these convos and hear everybody's story and to share them. So thanks for showing up, and please continue to show up. We've got episodes for you every week. Hit that subscribe button. We're so grateful if you subscribe, and that way you don't miss a single episode. If you would leave us a rating and review, that also helps us immensely, and send this episode to a friend who needs to hear it. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.